Hello everyone, welcome on in. It's Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, number one tennis betting podcast and YouTube channel brought to you in association with Bet Rivers, your hometown sportsbook. I am Nigel Seeley. Thanks for joining. Please hit that subscribe button. Lots of new subscribers join us all the time on the fastest growing football and tennis betting YouTube channel. So thank you very much for joining us. Hit that bell to be alerted every time a bit of content drops. And hopefully today we'll catch some winners looking at some matches across the two ATP Tour events this week. And to do so, I'm joined by our senior ATP Tour handicapper. It is Sean Calvert. Good morning to you, Sean.
Good morning.
You've had a bit of an eventful morning already.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, we're supposed to have Lagan's football. He was supposed to have an early kickoff, 9:45 in a cup match. But yeah, we got there and we had to wait probably about 45 minutes for them to decide whether they were going to play it or not. I mean, I sent you the photo, didn't I?
Yeah.
The pitch was covered in frost. When the kids went out to warm up, you could hear them clip-clopping. It sounded like horses on concrete. Mm. That's how hard it was. The other half of the pitch was okay because the sun had caught it, but I say it was okay. It was still hard. It just wasn't covered in frost. So there was all these conversations going on. Lots of people tapping their feet on the floor and shrugging their shoulders and all this. And the only person that wanted to play was the ref. The two teams were like, no, we're not having this, because it was rock hard. It was dangerous. But for some reason the ref wanted to play. And the problem was that if either team said we're not playing, then they would, because it's a cup game, they would have forfeited the match and the opposition would have won. So neither of the teams wanted to forfeit because they would have gone out of the cup. And the ref wasn't budging. He was saying it was okay to play, but in the end, after about 45 minutes, longer for some of the other dads had been there for like an hour. Eventually, they decided to call it off. So I'm stood on the sidelines looking at the odds for waiting for the odds to come out.
Looking like a compulsive gambler on the sidelines, watching your son play football, looking at your betting app.
But he wasn't doing anything, was he? He was actually he managed to get more muddy in doing a warm up than he did for the actual normal match. He's absolutely caked in mud and he didn't even play a single minute. But yeah, I was on the sideline waiting for odds to come out on Rotterdam, grumbling and sort of yelling at the referee to get on with it. This old guy, I'm not sure what was going on there, to be honest. I don't know why he wanted to play. I don't get it.
They get paid about $40 a match. They need that.
They still get paid, though, don't they? If the match doesn't go ahead. Do they not?
I'm not so sure. Anyway, that's
this old guy looked like Uncle Albert out of Only Fools and Horses for the British viewers. He must have been about 100. I think he's just gone a bit, I don't know, his eyes must be failing him or something. Anyway, that's what happened, and now I'm back and ready for the tennis. That's it.
Ready for the tennis, raring to go. An eventful morning there. The joys of taking your son to football matches. I'm so pleased that I don't have to do it anymore. It's fantastic.
You come and do Lakers.
Lying on the Sunday. Perfect. Absolutely lovely. Done all that. Bought the T-shirt. Moving on. Let's move on to this week's tennis tournament. It's in Rotterdam, our first event. It's a 500 event, which I will be going to on Tuesday. You'll be able to follow my time at the tennis at our Instagram account, Because We Win, and also on social media. It's an indoor event. It's a big tournament. I always like this tournament. It's the ABN AMRO. I know you've been here before, Sean. What are the conditions going to be? Well, what are the conditions like, the most importantly?
Depends. It really does depend on it. It's an indoor tournament. They usually play it on a Proflex indoor hard court, but it changes every year. As I said before, when you play an indoor tennis, the venue that they're playing on is used for something else for the rest of the year. So they just lay it, a week or two before the tournament, and then they can decide with Proflex in this case how quick they want it. Last year it was quicker than the previous years because it had been pretty slow. This tournament has changed pace so many times. It used to be really quick back in the old days. Then they slowed it down. Then they sped it up again. Then they slowed it down again. All I can say is what happened last year when it was quicker.
Every time when you said that, I was thinking of Bucks Fizz. They gotta speed it up, then they gotta slow it down.
That very old reference is probably quite opposite to this, because that's what they do. Richard Krajicek's the tournament director. He never seems to be able to make his mind up on how quick he wants it.
Can your mind up? Oh, here we go.
Here we go. I'm not doing
it's
this
the
on
land
purpose,
of make believe. This is the land of make believe.
You totally put me off my stride now with these books. Was that another Bucks Fizz?
Yeah, land of make believe. The camera never lies.
Yeah,
These are classics. I've seen them live.
Most people watching the show won't have the faintest idea what you're talking about at this point, but never mind.
Go on to Spotify or YouTube. You don't know Bucks Fizz. Put them in. Put Making Your Mind
You're
Up.
not missing much.
You'll be dancing around the kitchen.
You're not missing much, I can guarantee you. Anyway, it was quicker last year than it was the previous year. So 2024, 87% holds of serve here and 76.2% first serve points won, which puts it miles quicker than it was in the 2 or 3 years before that. They use Technifiber balls here, which I'm not a fan of. They're a bit slow, but even with those balls, it made that amount of holds, 87% holds and 76% first serve points won. That makes it quick. They could change it. We don't know. There were 52% of the matches featured a tie break last year. Set one over 10.5 games. 42% of the matches here went over 10.5 in set one. In 2024, that would equate to odds of about 2.38 plus 138 for set one over 10.5. So that's certainly something to bear in mind. And as far as the overs is concerned, there's a bit of a trend for overs at this tournament anyway. Over 22.5 games, 57% last year and 53% in the last 3 editions. So a little bit of a trend for over 22.5 if you're an overs and unders backer. Underdogs is kind of average 34%. Have won here over the years. Just going on to the trends, only 2 number 1 seeds have made the final here since 2011. So a very long time. Only 2 number 1 seeds making the final. That said, the last 5 winners of this tournament have been priced up between 11-8 and 8-1. So very, very few, or none, big price winners in the last 5 editions. Qualifiers have often gone well here. The last 9 editions of qualifiers made at least the semi-finals on 5 separate occasions.
Yep, and let's have a look at the previous winners. They've been Yannick Sinner last year, Daniil Medvedev 2023, Felix Auger-Aliassime 2022, Andrei Rublev 21, and Gael Monfils in 2020 and 2019. If we look at the draw, the number 1 seed is Carlos Alcaraz, coming here after his disappointment in the Australian Open, and he's up against Botic van der Sandschulp in round 1, a repeat of that US Open match, the biggest shock of last year. Can the Dutchman do it in front of his home crowd? That'll be a blockbuster opening match. The one thing I noticed about the Q1, it's the quarter of double-barreled names. Van der Sandschulp, Auger-Aliassime, Bautista Agut, they're all in there. The double-barreled matches are all in there. If we went to seedings, it would be Alcaraz, the number 1 seed, will play Holger Rune, who is number 5 seed in the top half. Andrei Rublev, former winner here, is the number 4 seed. He will play Herbert Hurkacz, who's had some injury problems. In the bottom half, Artur Fils, number 7 seed, will play Alex de Minaur, number 3. And Stefanos Tsitsipas, the number 6 seed, will play Daniil Medvedev, the number 2 seed, who opens up in an interesting match against Stanislas Wawrinka. Remember, Daniil Medvedev was humiliated at the Australian Open earlier last month. They are the draw, and these are the current odds with BetRivers. Alcaraz is plus 150, very, very short price for the Spaniard. Medvedev is plus 350, again, extremely short price for the number 2 seed given his form. Alex de Minaur is 8, Andrei Rublev 14, Felix Auger-Aliassime is 14. He plays in the tournament final today in Montpellier. Mpechi Perigard is 16, he's been playing Davis Cup. Artur Fils is 18, he's been playing Davis Cup. Hurkacz 18, Holger Rune 20, Berrettini 22, he's in there as a dangerous outsider. Opens up against Tallon Griekspoor in the first round, interesting match there. Stefanos Tsitsipas, how the mighty have fallen, he's 22-1. And then Mencic and Lehechka 25 and 28, and then we go into 40-1 Kovacevic, who's also is in the final against Felix Auger-Aliassime today. Bublik at 50 and Alexei Popyrin at 50-1. So it's quite a decent little tournament, actually. But let's start at the top of the list. Alcaraz, plus 150. Too short, that, isn't it?
Well, considering he's never played here and he's never made a main level final on indoor hard, then yes, you would have to say so. I mean, I think the first thing we've got to perhaps mention before we go into this is the amount of players that have played Davis Cup and are still playing Davis Cup. We have this problem every year. I always write DC in a little bit of biro next to the players in the draw sheet, and there's quite a few. Not just Davis Cup as well, but as you said, Felix Auger-Aliassime is playing the Montpellier final today. Pedro Martinez is still playing Davis Cup. Holger Rune played Davis Cup. Zhang's played Davis Cup. Marijan's still playing Davis Cup in Canada. That match is not even close to being finished. That tie is not even close to being finished yet. Lehechka's played Davis Cup. Artur Fils is still playing Davis Cup today. Kovacevic, as I've said, is in the Montpellier final with Felix. And Petr Pericard is playing Davis Cup. He hasn't actually played yet, but he's there. He might play today, or he might play the doubles or something. I'm not sure. He's still involved. Jakub Mensic's played. Alex de Minaur's played. So all these guys have come from various parts of the world to play here, and it's the same with Dallas, which we'll probably talk about in a minute. So you kind of need to do your research if you're looking at the outrights. The obvious ones are players that have not finished and are coming from miles away, like Marijan, which is probably why he's under such a sizable underdog against Jan-Lennard Struck, because he's got to come from Canada. So all those things you kind of have to bear in mind when you're looking at this tournament. Alcaraz, for me, plus 150, never won a fight, never made a final on indoor hard. Obviously, he will at some point. Given that he looks like he's a player that's making a few changes to his game, that the heavier racket, it looked like he was playing a more aggressive game in Australia. It ended up costing him against Djokovic, made far too many unforced errors. So he's a player kind of transitioning a little bit. Daniil Medvedev, for me, is nowhere near the player that he was. Certainly not at the moment. Looks to have completely lost his way. For me, playing far too defensively. He was always a counterpuncher, a reactor type of player. But for me, he's taken that too far now. I did think it was a strange thing for him to bring Gilles Simon in, the master tactician, the real cat and mouse player. Seems to be encouraging Medvedev to be even more kind of passive. For me, that's not the way he needs to be playing. I'm taking Alex de Minaur here. I think he's the third favourite. He's the man in form. If you're looking slightly down the list behind de Minaur, you've got Rublev, who's in terrible form at the moment. Just looks bereft of confidence. Felix has still got to play the Montpellier final, and Petr Pericard is still playing Davis Cup, and we know he's a danger indoors, but if you're looking at that section of the draw where Petr Pericard is, he will probably have to. Well, he will have to play Alex de Minaur if he's going to get further on in this tournament. And we know Alex de Minaur is a great player against big servers. Got a great record against big servers because he returns so well. So de Minaur, for me, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, his first round match, he's got a 5-0 head-to-head against a desperately out of form David Goffin. It's hard to see him not winning that. De Minaur's only played a couple of sets in Davis Cup in Sweden, so that's not going to be too taxing. It's not very far at all, and he only played a couple of sets. And that match, the Australia tie, is wrapped up, so he should be in Rotterdam already, I should imagine, or getting there today. He's got a very good record at this tournament, 9-4 win-loss, de Minaur, and a service points won and return points won total of 105 at Rotterdam. I think he made the final last year, didn't he? Lost to Sinner. If we're looking at the last 12 months, main level on all hard courts, his service points won and return points won total is 106, which is better than Medvedev. It's not as good as Alcaraz, but it's better than all the rest in this field. Certainly better than Medvedev. As I've said, he goes well against big servers, so I should imagine he'll be very effective against either Bublik or Mensik, who he would play after Goffin, and then potentially in Petr Pericard as well. Artur Fils is the one in that section that would concern me most, but he's still playing Davis Cup at the minute, so we're kind of guessing as to how he's going to shape up. So de Minaur, for me, in what's the bottom half of the draw, I think the top half is interesting. I think Q2 is one where you need to be looking at an outsider, because that's where Andrei Rublev is. As I've said, he's certainly not playing the kind of tennis he would need to play to win a tournament of this magnitude. I'm not even completely convinced that he's going to beat Zhang in the first round. But that said, Zhang's coming from Davis Cup I think he's in China. It's a long way anyway, wherever it is. So he might have a chance there. Hurkacz, for me, is, again, a player in transition. Two new voices in his camp, split up with Craig Boynton at the end of last year. Now he's with Nicholas Massu, who used to coach Dominic Thiem. And Ivan Lendl is also there as a consultant. So they're trying to tweak his game as well. Hasn't worked out great so far. He got beaten very comfortably in Australia by, I think it was Kekmanovic, wasn't it? So he's another player in transition. So for me, Lehechka in that section at 28-1 is the value. He's beaten Andrei Rublev a couple of times. So he's certainly, the way that form is at the moment, you would certainly fancy him against Andrei Rublev. He's only played Hurkacz once, and it was here, actually, in Rotterdam. It went all the way to a final set tiebreak. Hurkacz nicked it in a final set tiebreak. So not worried about either Rublev or Hurkacz as far as Lehečka is concerned. Lehečka's only played here once. That was 2022. He made it all the way to the semi-finals as a qualifier in the only time he's ever played here. And that was when it was slower. Anything quicker would be certainly preferable for Lehečka. We know he goes well in Australia in the quick surfaces there. He's won 3 of his last 5 matches, Lehečka, against top 5 opposition. And the only 2 losses were against Yannick Sinner. And again, he only played briefly in Davis Cup, 1 match at home in Czechia, a couple of sets done. Shouldn't be too fatigued. And if anything, that would be quite a nice preparation. So Lehečka for me, what is he, 28-1? Yep, 28-1. And de Minaur at 8, I think, for me here in Rotterdam.
So there's a pick in the top half and a pick in the bottom half. I do like de Minaur, actually. I quite like de Minaur here at 8-1. I think it's a great. Would it be an each way bet for you, Sean, or would it be just a win only?
I think we can go each way here. It's kind of at the very edge of what's acceptable for me as far as each way is concerned. But I'm not that worried about anybody in the bottom half, really. I mean, Medvedev has obviously had a good record against de Minaur over the years, but we'll talk about Medvedev in a minute. He's not playing anything like the sort of tennis that he needs to play.
Yep. So each way, Alex de Minaur, bottom half of the draw, away from Carlos Alcaraz. And in the top half of the draw, we're going for Lehečka at 28-1 to cause an upset and come through. So a big price there and a nice each way play. I do love that de Minaur play. I think there's so many question marks about these players coming in. We've seen already this season the amount of injuries that these players had in retirements, and you wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of these players maybe not fancy this week and pull out as the tournament goes on. If you want to follow the action at the tournament, you can have a bet with Bet Rivers. Bet live and watch live. The tournament matches start at 5 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And if you do have a bet on the Bet Rivers app or the website, you'll be able to watch the match live from the comfort of your own home. If you want extra content, I'll be there from Tuesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll be over at the tennis, and you'll be able to follow me at Because We Win on our Instagram account. So lots of action to come, lots of stuff to come, and there's 3 matches that Sean has highlighted. The first match is involving Daniil Medvedev up against the veteran Stanislas Wawrinka. Minus 770 is the price for the Russian, plus 510 for Wawrinka. 4.5 is the spread, and the total here is 20.5. There is a whole host of markets available on the Bet Rivers website. I think 28 different markets currently now on this match. The head-to-head is 3-2 to Medvedev, but the first time they met was in 2017, so 8 years ago. So the head-to-head is pretty irrelevant now. But the one thing is relevant is that both of these players are not playing at all their best. Obviously, Australian Open Medvedev, and it was awful in his first round match, just coming through, scraped through, and then he was terrible against Lernia Tien. He lost in 5 sets there. But Wawrinka, he hasn't won a match on the main tour since Basel back in October. So difficult one to call, and hence the reason why Medvedev is minus 770 here.
Yeah, I think you would expect Medvedev to win the match on fitness, rather than anything else. But I do like the price about Stan making this tough for a Medvedev who's coming here in awful form, really. Stan's obviously declined at, his age. What is he, 39 now? He's obviously not at his best, but like Richard Gasquet last week when we had a couple of wagers on Gasquet, didn't we? He can still turn it on when he's up for it and physically able to do so. He hasn't lost that ability. He made the semi-final in Stockholm on indoor hard, only a few months ago. Beat Rublev there, beat Davidovich Fokina, beat Nakashima. Made it all the way to the semi-final. So he's still... It's a question of finding him when he's motivated and up for it and physically able to perform at his best. This is obviously you would think this would be his last season. You would imagine this would be his last time playing at Rotterdam. I presume he's got a wild card here. He's not going to keep getting them. This is basically his retirement tour, isn't it? So he should be up for this. He really should. I can sort of see him not being up for some of these 250s. Like the end of last year, he played Belgrade 250, the Bratislava Challenger, Montpellier last week. These aren't particularly inspiring tournaments, but he played pretty well against Sonego, a Sonego that went on to make the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. He was very close against Sonego. So I think when he fancies it, when he's able to, he can still do it. And Medvedev, as you said, has been awful lately. He's lost 5 of his last 7 matches. As you said, lost to Tien at the Australian Open, having gone 5 sets in the opening round against the Thai wildcard, who I must admit I knew very little about. Medvedev managed to go 5 sets with him. The other interesting thing here for me is that all 5 of Medvedev's opening sets of his opening match in Rotterdam have gone to either 10 or 12 games. Wawrinka beat Medvedev as a plus 581 chance in their only indoor meeting in Metz in 2022. We know Stan's return game has declined. That's probably the biggest standout of his statistics, where he is now to where he used to be. His return game isn't that good anymore. Just briefly looking at their head-to-head, it's a while ago, but last 3 matches, Wawrinka does lead 103 to 97 in terms of service points won and return points won. So while you can say he's declined, that's fair. Wawrinka won't be looking at it that way. He'll be looking at it in the sense that he knows he can be competitive and beat this guy. And Medvedev's only won 32.6% of return points against Wawrinka in those last 3 matches. If we also look at what these guys have done, last 10 matches each on indoor hard at main level, there's certainly no advantage for Medvedev. 30% win rate for him and a service points won and return points won total of 99. Wawrinka, 50% win rate and also 99. You could certainly caveat that by saying Medvedev's played the better class of opposition in some of those matches, World Tour finals, stuff like that. So that's fair. But again, both guys only winning 33% of return points. So with all that in mind, and the knowledge that Wawrinka is generally, if not always, competitive in the opening set, even against the best players, I think this price of plus 255, 3.55 that Bet Rivers are giving here on over 10.5 in set 1, I think that's generous and certainly worthy of a bet. I expect Wawrinka to keep this close, certainly for a time. I don't think Medvedev's going to just walk in and win this 6-2, 6-3. I don't see that at all.
It doesn't look interested at the moment as well, Medvedev. I know he's just had a child, but the Australian Open, I think there was a question about his sort of will to win. I thought his body language was awful. Absolutely
it often
awful.
is. I mean, even when he made the final the year before, when we were on him the year before, every match was a struggle, wasn't it? It was either really long 4 or 5, pretty much every single match, and he ended up costing him in the final. But I just think, I guess, you look at that Tien match, that Lerner Tien match. He was 2 sets to 1 up in that, wasn't he, against a young guy. You would have thought he would have put his foot down and just got out of there in 4 sets and lived to fight another day. But he's just too passive. He's miles behind the baseline against someone like Tien, who isn't the most powerful. It was all wrong for me. I don't know where Medvedev's going at the minute, but it certainly isn't in the sort of direction that would make me want to back him at minus 770 against most players.
Yep, minus 770 is the price you will get for Medvedev, and we are going for over 10.5 at a nice price in set number 1. Head across to the BetRivers website. As I say, 5 a.m. All these matches start Eastern time on Monday morning. The next match is an interesting one. Matteo Berrettini up against Tallon Griekspoor. The big servers, the two of these. Berrettini's minus 167. He just keeps getting bet. Every time there's a price goes up, Berrettini, he keeps getting bet, and he's being bet again here up against Griekspoor, who is the home player. And he's a big underdog, plus 135. The spread is 1.5. We would expect games, and no surprise, the games are as high at 24.5, with over, I imagine, being popular at minus 115. They've never met each other before. I watched Tallon Griekspoor this week play against Richard Gasquet. We were heavily involved in Richard Gasquet. How we never won, I don't know. But Tallon Griekspoor didn't. I'm telling you, Tallon Griekspoor was going through the motions there. He wasn't playing at his best. He was looking for this one, but I was absolutely gutted that we didn't cash. We should have cashed. But this Tallon Griekspoor price here at plus 135 at home in Rotterdam against a Berrettini that has loads of injury problems. There is money all the time pouring in for Berrettini, but I'm not liking this move here.
No, I wasn't aware there was money coming for him. But
yeah,
if you look at what he's done, Berrettini as favourite, priced in the bracket of 1.5 to 1.7, that's minus 200 to minus 143. He's lost 8 of his last 11 matches. So you don't really want to be on Berrettini at this price. If it's getting shorter, as you're suggesting that it is, then no, absolutely not for me. We were certainly unlucky with that Gasquet bet last week. The 2 sets that he was the most competitive were the second and the third, which you wouldn't have expected, really, would you? No. Typical gas game in many ways. He had a couple of break points, didn't he? Didn't take them and then got broken in the very next game to lose the first set. But yeah, Griekspoor wasn't playing well last week. No surprise, because he does have Rotterdam obviously now. We knew that. He obviously knows that. So no real surprise that he was a bit lackluster in Montpellier. He's certainly not been in form yet this year. He split from his long-standing coach at the end of last year, injured at the start of this year, a little bit like Hurkacz in some ways, but always raises his level in Rotterdam, which is something that you can't really say about the Dutch players other than Griekspoor in the last sort of 10, 15 years or whatever. Most of them really struggle. Van der Zandschulp, he always has a nightmare at Rotterdam. And the other Dutch tournament in Den Bosch, he doesn't perform well at all. Griekspoor is the one that bucks the trend. It seems to me with Griekspoor that he's one of those players that does struggle with the tour grind, the sort of week in, week out. If we look at what Alexander Zverev said about him last time they played, he said that Griekspoor should be either top 10, top 15, if he played the way he does against him, against everyone. He basically hinting that he only shows up for the big matches, and there's an argument there. Certainly, he certainly seems to perform his best against the better players. Last week, being a case in point, he lost to Jesper de Jong in Montpellier. It's not really good enough if you have pretensions of being in the sort of top 20, top 15. And the return game, it's still a big issue for him. If we look at what he's done in Rotterdam, Griekspoor, 30% of return points won only, and he plays 0.32 tiebreaks per set, roughly one tiebreak set every 3 sets he plays here. 9 of his last 12 sets in Rotterdam have gone over 10.5 games. The tiebreak, though, is kind of an obvious bet with these two, and probably not much value. I think it was something like 2.25 over 10.5 in set 1, so not much value there for me. But if you look at the last 10 matches each at main level on indoor hard, it's a much better statistics for Griekspoor. 60% win rate and a service points won and return points won total of 103. Berrettini, just 40% win rate and a total of 99. Again, return points won in those stats very low. Berrettini, 33%. Griekspoor, a little better, 34%. But Berrettini, his best stuff nowadays, for whatever reason, seems to come in Davis Cup. The stats I just mentioned there at main level and indoor hard, they didn't include Davis Cup. If we look at Davis Cup only, the last 10 matches that Berrettini's played in Davis Cup on indoor hard, 80% win rate and a service points won and return points won total of 108. Massive difference. I know sometimes you get lower ranked players in the Davis Cup, but even so, a far better return on a very, very similar surface, if not the same surface, in Davis Cup than on the main tour. So motivation here for Griekspoor, massive. Berrettini, is he that motivated? It just seems to be only Davis Cup and the majors that Berrettini seems to show his best stuff. So I'm happy to take Griekspoor here. Plus 135? I think that's the bet.
Plus 135. I think it might actually get bigger, So remember, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Maybe wait a couple of hours after this podcast and see how the price drifts. But I got a feeling Berrettini, just looking at the market trends, Berrettini's still being bet here, and Griekspoor seems to be on the rise. So might be best to leave that alone. Head across to the BetRivers website probably a bit later on today and see if you can get the price on Griekspoor. But I do think Griekspoor at home is the wrong price here against the Berrettini. It was always bet into silly prices, and it looks like that again. Lorenzo Sonego plays Holger Rune. Holger Rune is -$2. Sonego is plus 155. Of Sonego had an excellent Australian Open. Rune didn't have a great Australian Open. The spread is 2.5, and the total here is 23.5. The head-to-head is very overwhelming in favour of Holger Rune. They've met twice before. If you look at it on the head-to-head, it's 2-0 to Rune. But when you break down each match in 2021 in Metz and 2022 in Sofia, they were close. They were close matches, and Sonego took the opening set on both occasions in a tiebreak. So maybe over 10.5, over 12.5 could be the way they go again here. But Sonego is playing the best tennis of his life, up to not far off a career high, and Rune is in a bit of a slump here. But yet the Norwegian is the Dane. Norwegian, I think rude. The Dane is -$2.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I always get Norwegian and Danes mixed up when it comes to these two, Rude and Rune. I've done it numerous times. Yeah, it's just not a great price, is it, on Holger Rune? He's coming off a typically up and down weekend in Davis Cup. Lost his first singles rubber to Hamed Medvedev, 6-3, 6-1 in the last two sets. He won the opening set 6-2. Completely lost his way. Some of his comments afterwards were quite interesting. He said he'd never felt like that on a court before. He said he was below the worst he's ever played, I think he said, which is kind of I'm not sure how he can be below the worst, but there we are. This is Holger Rune in a nutshell, isn't it? Sometimes he's great, and you look at him and think, well, this guy should be challenging for the big honours. Other times you look at him and think, well, he's not really putting the effort in. It's frustrating, I should imagine, if you're a fan or a backer of Holger Rune. He is so inconsistent, and he came back, to his credit. He came back after that Medvedev match and beat Kekmanovic 6-2, 6-4, and that was a player that he very nearly lost to at the Australian Open. Should have lost to at the Australian Open. He's come back and beat him pretty convincingly. So that's Rune. He's still this kind of curate's egg of a player, if you like. Sometimes great, sometimes just very tamely. Not sure why that is. If we look at what Sonego's done in 2025 so far, I know it's a very small snapshot in time, but 88% holds the serve. Service points won and return points won, total of 102. Still the same old issue that he's always had, similar to Griekspoor, just not winning enough points on return. He's only won 33% of return points so far this year, and 15% breaks of serve, and that's obviously a problem for him. That's where he needs to improve. Given also that he's been absolutely nowhere near the Holger Rune serve in their two matches that they played on indoor hard that you mentioned, it does suggest tie breaks to me, or long sets at least. If you look at that head-to-head, I know it's 2-0 to Rune, and Sonego won the opening set both times, but it's 112-88 in favour of Holger Rune in terms of their service points won and return points won totals across those two matches. Sonego winning just 23% of return points. So, incredibly low number of return points. He's been absolutely nowhere near the Holger Rune serve, and Rune's held 97% of the time. You could certainly say, if you're a Sonego backer or fan there, that was a Rune back in the day there that was on his way up and probably in the best form of his career. He's kind of stuttered a lot since then, and he hasn't really fired in the last sort of year or two. So you could say this is not the same Rune that he played a couple of years ago. So for me here, either tie break played in this match at 1.9, what's that, about minus 110-ish?
Yep.
Or set one over 10.5 is plus 170. If we go back to the stats that I mentioned at the start of the tournament last year, 42% of the opening sets did go over 10.5, which would give you odds of 2.38. On this one, we're getting 2.7. So if I was having a bet in this match, that would certainly be the way that I would go, given the statistics and the head-to-head and all the rest of it.
Yeah, really like that play as well. Over 10.5 in a tournament that is going to be relatively quick with players that we think, yeah, and we got to make our mind up. We'll speed it up or slow it down. We don't know, but I think that the over is definitely the way to go there. So they are the bets that we're going to have on round one over in Rotterdam. 3 matches previewed there. Unfortunately, we don't have any matches that we can preview in Dallas at the moment because there's no lines out. The draw has just come through.
So a very late draw, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's and we're lucky that we've got some actually tournament winner prices, but we have got some tournament winner prices here over in Dallas. And before we go on to them and break down the draw, what are the conditions like over in Texas?
I don't know. To be completely honest.
That's it. Okay.
The reason that I don't know is because it's been moved to a new venue this year and upgraded to a 500. Last year it was a 250, played at a totally different venue. Now it's been played at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco, which is the headquarters and training facility, as I'm sure you know, Nigel, of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. I dated a couple of the cheerleaders. I knew that out there.
There you go. I don't know whether they were training there that many decades ago, but yeah, that's where they play now, at the training facility of the Dallas Cowboys. So we don't know what the conditions are going to be like because it's essentially a completely new tournament. slightly, a little hint of altitude, 217 meters to be precise of altitude at that the Star in Frisco. We don't know what surface it is. Obviously, it's indoor hard, but we don't know specifically what, because the ATP don't tell us anymore. And I'll be perfectly honest, the tournament have not replied to my request to ask them what surface they're playing on. I got a stony silence on that. It does look like they're using Dunlop ATP balls on the basis that Dunlop is listed as one of their partners. That when that's normally the case, that's what's happening. I should imagine they're using Dunlop ATP balls. So we don't know how quick it's going to be. When this tournament first started, it was really, really quick. And then they slowed it down.
Oh, here we go
again, aren't you? Then they slowed it down. Last year, it was much, much slower than the previous years. And now it's a totally new venue. So we don't know how quick this is going to play. And the trends and the stats aren't really relevant. There's only been 2 or 3 editions of this anyway, so no real trends. And the stats aren't relevant because it's a totally different surface.
And so it must be virtually impossible to how are we going to look at find the winner here? But if we look at previous winners, Americans have done well. Tommy Paul won it in 2024. Riley Opelka's won it twice before. So the Americans have had a good recent record. And there's lots of Americans in this draw. I'm guessing as well there's going to be players who've been in action across the globe. If you look at the draw, Taylor Fritz is the number 1 seed. If it went to seedings, Mahak will be the likely quarter final opponent. Tommy Paul is the number 3 seed who will play Mickelson. That's the top half of the draw made up. Bottom half of the draw, Arnaldi and Shelton, and TFO against Casper Ruud. Just by looking at the observation there, I think the bottom half of the draw looks a lot weaker than the top half of the draw. So for betting purposes, I would be looking at that bottom half.
Yeah. That's my conclusion as well. I'll just quickly run through the Davis Cup guys here because this is quite relevant. Some of these have come a long way. Kekmanovic, I just mentioned, he's been playing Davis Cup in Europe. Kei Nishikori's been playing Davis Cup in Japan. Mahak has been playing Davis Cup at home in Czechia, obviously Europe. Alex Mickelson has been playing, I think he played in Chinese Taipei. So a long old journey for him. Same for Marcos Giron, also Chinese Taipei. Hao Munar, not that you would consider him a likely winner here, but he's also been playing. He's still playing, actually, Davis Cup in Europe. I think they're playing in Sweden. Vukic has played Davis Cup for Australia, but not in Australia. I think they played in Europe somewhere. I can't remember where. Nishioka is coming from Davis Cup in Japan as well. And Casper Ruud is also coming from Davis Cup. I think he played at home in Norway. So some of these players are coming a long, long way, particularly the ones coming from Asia. So that's one thing to bear in mind. And the American players, looking at this outright list here, Taylor Fritz, apart from Mickelson, Taylor Fritz, Ben Shelton, Tommy Paul, Francis Tiafoe, these guys you would have thought would have been at home after the Australian Open, and they should be the ones that are by far the better prepared and acclimatized, unlike these guys that are coming from Asia, the guys that are coming from Europe. They haven't really got that long to get a feel for what will probably be very different conditions to what they've just played in. So, tricky one. As you said, I think the bottom half of the draw is definitely the easier. The top half is absolutely loaded. The bottom half, you're looking at Arnaldi, Davidovich Fokina, Shelton, Tiafoe. Giron's played well here, but what would put me off him is his long journey from Chinese Taipei, and Casper Ruud. So for me, I think Tiafoe is the value here, around about 10, 11 to 1. As I've said, a lot of these players, particularly in that Q4, they're coming a long way from Davis Cup. Tiafoe's playing at home, gets a lot of support here. He's mentioned numerous times how much he likes this tournament, although his results here have been a little bit in and out, a little bit sketchy. But he's got a Casper Ruud that's coming from Norway, and Shelton, who obviously they met the US Open quite recently, and Tiafoe won that one. So I would certainly fancy him in terms of betting value ahead of Shelton. The Shelton's the obvious choice really in Q3 because he's got Arnaldi, Davidovich Fokina, not really a great deal else. You would expect Shelton to come out of that section. Would he beat Tiafoe though? or would he be valued to beat TFO? Not for me, given their recent meeting and the fact that TFO's return game is a lot better now than it was probably the last time he played this tournament, certainly the time before. It all depends on how he feels, TFO. If he's up for it, if he's bringing the energy, whipping the crowd up, I think that's a pretty decent price, 10-1, given where he is in the draw. Taro Daniil is his opening match, shouldn't present that many difficulties. Then maybe a tired Nishioka or Nakashima. You kind of would expect TFO to win that. And you've got obviously Giron and Rune playing each other in the first round, so one of those will be out. Both of them you would think would be a little bit leggy. So I think this is an opportunity for TFO, a 10-1. The only other one I thought in that section would be Nakashima, the bigger priced option at 25-1. He's the one perhaps to look at if you are going for a slightly bigger price. His return game is not really good enough, though. He tends to play a lot of tie breaks. Therefore, he's going to need a bit of luck on his side to progress through if he is relying on tie breaks quite a bit. So, yeah, TFO for me here.
Yeah, I mean, TFO's 11-1, Shelton's 5-1. So bigger than double the price. You're getting 5.5-1 TFO just to make the final. So, yeah, if they do meet up and TFO has one of his days and gets the crowd behind him, which we expect him to do, that 11-1 looks a big price. Just give you a quick rundown of the price. We didn't give you a rundown of the prices. Taylor Fritz is the 3-1 favourite. He's in the top half of the draw, which is very difficult, as Sean said. Ben Shelton 5, Tommy Paul 650, Thomas Mahak 750. Casper Ruud, tough opener against Giron, he's 9. Francis TFO 11. Then we go into 20-1 Mickelson and Riley Opelka, who's won this tournament twice before. So you would suggest that it'd be quite quick, which will suit TFO here at 11-1. So that has been it for our preview of the two tournaments. There is no matches yet, as we are said in Dallas. But tomorrow you'll be able to head across to the Bet Rivers website and the app and get the odds before the tournament starts. Losing slightly on the game bet match this season, losing slightly behind on the WTA. But across all 4 of our main shows, if you bet everything we had said, you'd be in profit. So that's all that counts, making sure we can get in profit. Sean, before I leave you, just give us a quick recap of your bets for today.
Yeah, just the one bet in Dallas. We don't have any match odds yet on that one. So TFO, 11-1 each way there. Obviously, you can bet each way with Bet Rivers. That's 11-1 in Dallas. In Rotterdam, my official pick as far as matches are concerned, I'm going to take what looks a very generous price from Bet Rivers on over 10.5 games in set 1 of Stanislas Wawrinka against Daniil Medvedev, plus 255, that is. Bet Rivers, very decent price there. A couple of leans that we talked about, Griekspoor and what was the other one? It was overs, wasn't it, in Sonego Sonego against Rune. A couple of leans there on those. And the each way bets outrights in Rotterdam, Yuri Lehechka, each way 28-1, and Alex Diminor each way at 8-1 in Rotterdam.
Love that Rotterdam pick. I'll be cheering Alex Diminor on. Hopefully you'll be following me on our Instagram account at Because We Win. I'll be in Holland from the Netherlands from Tuesday morning. I'm there until Friday as well. So make sure you follow that. Make sure you follow all the content here. Betting Weekly Live every day, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 4 o'clock UK. One of the handicapping team will be on there, giving the best bets and the market moves from Bet Rivers headquarters. And we have the football, soccer this weekend. No Premier League this weekend, but we have a big European card. And we have it all covered for you here on the fastest growing sports betting YouTube channel, Betting Weekly Studios, for all your best bets on soccer and tennis. Sean, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll speak again on Tuesday, probably when I'm at the hotel in Rotterdam. Take care, and we'll speak to you all again soon.